Hey everyone, it's Miss Bell here from the Science Lab, and today I'm here to talk to you about animals. Last time it was plants, this time we're talking about animals. So later on in the video we'll be discussing their basic needs, their physical characteristics, their behaviors, and how they are able to survive in their environment, in their habitat. So before we begin, I just want to clarify so that we both have an understanding that we are talking about the exterior of an animal, not necessarily the interior of an animal. Those are big words for second grade. So what I mean by exterior, that's the outside. That is what we're talking about. That's what we can see. We can see legs, we can see ears, we can see noses, we can see fur, we can see beaks. So we're not going to be talking about the interior of animals. That's everything we can't see inside bodies, like bones or muscles or tissue or blood or hearts. So with that in mind, here we go. I'm so excited. Let's get to it. Alright, so when we talked about plants last time, we talked about their basic needs. Now, plants have 5 basic needs. They were clean air, clean water, sunlight, healthy soil full of nutrients, and enough space in order for it to be able to grow properly. And animals have basic needs as well. Some of those needs are the same. Some are kind of the same, but just a little bit different, coming from a different source. And some basic needs are not what plants need. So one of the basic needs for animals is clean air, and that is the same as the basic needs of a plant. Now, this air needs to be clean and fresh, not full of any sort of pollution or any sort of poisonous gases. And just like plants, animals need to have their air at a correct temperature, not too hot, not too cold. A second basic need of animals is water. Most animals drink fresh water that needs to be clean and not full of any harmful bacteria. A third basic need of animals is food. Plants get their nutrients from the soil, but we as animals, we get our nutrients from food. Now, different animals have different eating styles. Some eat meat, some eat plants, and some eat meat and plants. So we as humans, we eat meat and plants, even though some people can make a different decision for their own eating habits. But we need food in order to have energy to do things, and we need food to gain all of that nutrients to have a healthy body. Another basic needs for animals is shelter. Now, this can look quite different going from animal to animal, but shelter equals protection in an animal's habitat. That could be protection from the weather, it could be protection from the environment itself, or that could be protection from predators or other animals. So shelter is important, whether it's a tree or a bush or deep inside the ground. And one last basic need for animals is just like plants. And you might not think about this, of what animals might need, but they do need space to grow. If we are all cooped up in one spot shoulder to shoulder, body to body, we're not going to have our basic need met of having enough space to be able to breathe or grow, and that might lead to us spreading around more germs or bacteria, and that can't be healthy for our basic needs of staying alive. When you look at an animal, you are using your eyes to look on the outside of that animal. And we might see different parts or traits or features of that animal. We would call those outside features a physical characteristic. Take, for instance, a bird. Birds have beaks, and those beaks can come in different colors, different shapes, different sizes, and birds use their beaks for different reasons. Also, there are animals that have fur that cover the outside of their bodies, like dogs or cats or bears. Fur can look different from animal to animal, as far as the length of the fur, the thickness of the fur, the color of the fur, and it all depends on what that animal needs to help it survive in its habitat. There are also animals that have feathers, like birds again, and birds' feathers again are different shapes, different sizes, different lengths, different thicknesses, different colors. And it all depends on what a bird needs to help it survive in its habitat. Another physical characteristic of an animal might be legs. Are the legs short? Are they wide? Are they strong? Are they weak? Do they have really thick muscles to help it jump really high? Does it have hooves on the bottom? Are there 4 legs? Are there 2 legs? Are there 8 legs? Another physical characteristic would be considered ears. Our ears help us hear, but there are some animals that need better hearing abilities because they would be considered prey, meaning other animals are trying to hunt them and eat them, so they need better hearing to help protect them in their habitat. Scales would be another example of a body covering, and scales such as on a fish help protect that fish from its predators. It helps keep moisture inside its body. It helps keep harmful things and bacteria on the outside of its body, just like our skin protects our bodies. Shells would be another example of a physical characteristic, such as turtle shells or snail shells. And fins is another feature on the outside of an animal, such as fish fins or dolphin fins. And lastly, there are wings. Certain insects or birds have wings that help them fly. That might be as part of their protection. That might be to help them migrate. Wings might help an animal be able to hunt better. So all of these physical characteristics help animals and are different from animal to animal depending on how an animal needs to survive in its habitat. Next, I want to show you a little cool activity that you can do if you're discussing penguins. Now, when you think of a penguin, think of where it might live. I always picture icy Antarctica, which is a very, very cold environment. It's an Arctic place. Lots of ice, freezing weather, lots of strong winds, and penguins are yet able to survive there without many troubles. And one of the reasons why penguins are able to live in such cold places is because of the outer coating of their bodies. If you don't know, penguins are actually covered in feathers. They are super, super tiny and actually really light, but kind of have a rough texture to them. And penguins' bodies create a type of natural oil kind of close to where their tail is, and those penguins use their beaks to spread that oil all around the outer parts of their body. So my activity is showing you how the waxy feathers of penguins help them survive the cold, harsh air and the cold waters in their polar habitats. So with this activity, you're going to need some crowns and a piece of paper that has a drawing of a penguin. I colored the body super, super hard with crayons to where there was no paper showing through. It was only the wax on top of the penguin's body. After I filled in the entire body with all the different colors, I took a squirt bottle and I filled it with blue colored water. And then I sprayed my bottle onto my waxy picture. And as you can see, the water just kind of bubbles up on top of my penguin's body. And that's because the wax from the crowns doesn't allow the water to go through, just like how a penguin's waxy, oily feathers don't let water go through and like freeze the penguin itself. Instead, those oily feathers, they repel the water away. Just like with magnets, magnets can attract or repel. Attract means that magnets stick together. Repel means the magnets go apart from each other. So the oily feathers repel the water away. It pushes the water away so that the penguin can stay healthy and warm enough to be able to survive in its Arctic habitat. When we talk about animal behaviors, that just means that an animal is doing some sort of action. So we have to ask, what is that animal doing and why is it doing it? What's the purpose of that animal doing the action? There are some animals that run really fast, and that might be to go chase after a meal if an animal is hunting, or that might be a defense mechanism. If an animal is being chased, then they need to run really fast in order to get away so that it's not being eaten. Snakes don't have legs, so they have to slither. Fish and sharks and octopus live in water, so they have to swim. A snake has really, really sharp fangs that it can bite an animal if it's feeling threatened, or it can bite an animal to release its poisonous venom if that animal is its next meal. Insects and birds fly, and this might be to go catch food, this might be to escape a predator, this might be for migration. Bees and other types of insects have a stinger, and they might use that stinger to attack if they're feeling threatened in their environment. Cheetahs and other types of animals that hunt might hide for an hour or so, waiting for the next prey to come along. A frog might have to jump from lily pad to lily pad to escape being eaten from a bird or a reptile. And skunks have a defense mechanism from underneath their tails, whenever they lift their tails, to spray a horrible, horrible smelling mist that comes out of their bodies. And they might do this to keep predators away, or they might use it if they're feeling threatened in their home. So we are going to focus on 3 different animals. First, I have a frog. I also have a fish and a chicken. And we're going to talk about how these 3 animals all have different physical characteristics. Remember, those are those outside things that we can see on an animal's body. We're going to talk about how those external physical characteristics can be related to where that animal lives, what that animal eats, and how that animal moves. Now, my frog lives, let's just say, on or near a pond. And by living near a pond, it's going to need some webbed feet. My frog eats insects, and so my frog is going to use its mouth and a long sticky tongue in order to eat those insects. And lastly, my frog moves by either swimming or hopping. So in order to do so, it's going to need a pair of strong back legs. Now moving on to my fish lives in water. So in order to be able to do that successfully, it's going to need gills and fins. And my fish eats plants and other types of fish, so it's going to use its mouth to be able to get what it needs to eat. And lastly, my fish moves by swimming. And in order for fish to swim, it needs its tail and fins. And my third animal, my chicken, we're going to say it lives on land. And in order to live on land, it needs its legs and its wings. Now my chicken eats bugs and worms and seeds, and in order to eat those items, it's going to use its beak and maybe even its feet to scratch either insects or worms. And lastly, my chicken moves by walking or flying really, really low to the ground. So in order to walk, it needs its feet, and in order to barely fly, it needs its wings. What we're going to do now is write some complete sentences. And in our sentences, we're going to have helpful information, very, very important information. So since we're talking about animals, we know that the living thing that we're talking about in our sentences is going to be a specific animal. And the physical characteristic of that animal is some body part on the outside of that animal. And with that particular body part, we're going to talk about that animal's behavior, why that body part is important, what is its purpose, what does it do to help that animal survive. So take a look at my cute little duck right here. We see it in its habitat, and I want you to focus on the bottom portion of this duck. particularly its webbed feet. Now, if you don't already know why a duck's feet are webbed and look like this, well, those webbed feet help that duck do some important things. Because a duck lives on water and land, it needs to be able to swim pretty well in water. So having webbed feet helps that duck swim best. So our sentence will read, the duck has webbed feet to help it swim in water. The purple word duck is my animal. The green word webbed feet is my body part. And the orange words are my behavior, swim in water. Now take a look at my crab. My crab is the animal. The body part that we're going to be talking about is the claws on the front of the animal, almost like its arms in a way. And those claws help either protect that animal, maybe if it gets in a fight or if it's trying to have a predator stay away from it. But a crab can also use those claws to pick up stuff and grab its food like we do with our hands. So our sentence reads, the crab has large claws to help it grab food. And lastly, take a look at this pretty hummingbird. It's very small, its wings flap so fast, but take a look at its beak. Do you see how long it is? It's also very straight. It's not bent or curved. So our sentence will read like this. The hummingbird has a straight beak to help it reach into flowers for food. So our animal is our hummingbird. Our body part that we're talking about is the straight beak, and its behavior is reaching into flowers for food. So let's talk a little bit more about how the physical characteristics of an animal, so those body parts, and the behaviors of an animal, what an animal does, how those two come together in order to help an animal survive by meeting its basic needs. Remember, there are 5 basic needs for animals. Clean air with the proper temperature, clean water, it needs space in order for it to be able to live happily and have room to grow. It needs some sort of shelter, either to stay warm or to protect its babies or to not get eaten, and it needs food. Now, for animals to have their basic need of air completed, different animals have different ways of being able to breathe. We as humans, we use our nose and our mouth to, can you guys do that with me now? Breathe in, breathe out. That's how we breathe. That's how we get our air. Other animals have other types of physical characteristics that help them breathe. Think about fish or any or other certain aquatic life that lives deep in the waters. They have gills on parts of their bodies that help them bring in oxygen that's found in water, and that helps those animals be able to breathe underwater. There are other animals that kind of soak in oxygen into their skin. It's kind of creepy and cool at the same time. Now, think about drinking water, taking in water somehow, because we need water to survive. Some animals have tongues. Think of a dog, how they kind of lap up water with their tongue and bring water like from a puddle or a bowl into their mouths. Other animals have maybe like a beak where they use their beak to get water, or they use their beak almost like a bucket and kind of scoop up the water and kind of dump that water into their body. We are able to use our limbs, our hands, to grab something and pour it into our mouth. But I guess we could lap it up like a dog if we really needed to, maybe if we didn't have hands. But our hands, our arms, our thumbs help us grab things and bring them close to our mouth, and that's how we get water. Animals also need to eat, and animals have different things on their body that can help them get or gather food. Some animals need sharp claws to attack another animal, or to help kind of tear up some meat. Other animals have a really thick beak that might have to be used to break into nuts or shells, like a bird beak. Other animals might need claws, like we mentioned with crabs. We, as humans, we can use our teeth. We have different kinds of looking teeth to bite food or to chew food or to kind of rip food apart. But we've also evolved as a species to use like forks and knives and spoons to help us eat in a certain way. Now we know every animal has to eat food, and depending on what food that animal eats will decide how that animal gets that food. If an animal eats plants, those plants are right there in nature. They don't have to go chasing after a piece of grass. They don't have to run really fast and use their claws to get a piece of tree bark or an acorn. But for the animals that eat other animals, they have to hunt. They have to use their abilities in order to meet this basic need of getting food to survive. Some animals use camouflage to help them hide from their prey. Some animals, like the ones I have right here, they attack in groups or packs, so they move all around their prey. They use each other and their big groups to surround their prey and eventually get closer and closer and closer to that animal and pounce on them and eventually attack that animal by working together in packs. Other animals use certain what we would consider bad things in order to kill a prey or paralyze a prey. Think of a snake biting something and releasing that poisonous venom. Other animals, maybe like a squid or an octopus, they use parts of their body to help capture a prey. So an octopus or squid might use their curly, flappy, tentacle limbs to hold on to a prey and restrain a prey in order for it to eat it later. Also, when it comes to hunting, there are animals that use maybe like their claws, like a lobster, or their talons, like a hawk, to help catch their prey and hold it still so that it can eventually eat it. Now, when an animal is considered a flying animal, we know that in some form or fashion they will have wings, whether it's a bird, an insect, a bat, a flying squirrel. Now, birds have lightweight feathered wings, but insects like these right here, they have thin membrane wings, very, very lightweight. You can see through them. Now, bats and flying squirrels, they have skin in between their front claws, and it's very flexible and allows them to glide through the air. And hummingbirds have super, super, super fast wings that flap really, really quickly. So that's all I've got for you guys as far as animals go. Just remember, my horse right here has hooves, and those hooves help the animal run fast and to protect its feet on the ground. But my snow owl over here has white feathers that could help my owl camouflage in the snowy habitat so that its prey doesn't see when it's coming. Bye guys.